Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.
Now this is a bargain. I know this game has a bit of a 60s flair, but even so, inflation's not that effective. Welcome to this world. Our world. A world begging to be taken over by you. So step 1, get a private island. Step 2, hire some minions to carry out your will. Step 3, build your lair. Step 4, steal. And finally step 5, build a doomsday device. A sequence which I suppose is Villain 101. Sure, it isn't always a private island, and sometimes they aim lower than world domination, just settling on gaining some wealth. But as you can see, we definitely won't stop at such paltry goals. We aim to hold and mold the planet, get their fealty, and force ownership of their realty. There are 3 islands you can choose from, as well as 4 major villains. Each one has different powers, and I'm guessing maybe different campaign elements. At least some of them, because some of the missions relate directly to the genius in question, their history, and I believe different doomsday devices. It's because I played with Maximilian, the wealth-obsessed one, the one who's seemingly a mix between Goldfinger and whichever Bond villain was the inspiration for Dr. Evil. And I highly doubt that the others would have a doomsday device as inefficient as one that turns areas to gold. I'd assume the general at least has something a bit more traditionally killy in mind. The game plays like Dungeon Keeper. You dig out dirt and build rooms for minions, and the forces of good, or justice in this game, attack your lair and you have to defend yourself through traps and combat. Except a whole lot more minions will occupy your lair, and they're arguably more expendable, as good hench people are, because they automatically get replenished via helicopter, albeit slowly. You train them up to become different classes, combat, science or distraction minions, and you train them even further to become higher end, more specialized hench people. For instance, a grunt can eventually become a martial arts master. And at the very least, I believe they did improve this element in the sequel. You can set it that when these hench people die, a new one will automatically get trained in its place. And that streamlined approach is good, as you use these minions on the world stage as a currency to pull off schemes from which there is no return. Also, arguably, you're not as soft as the ultimate evil. Slapping minions does not motivate them. Executing them as a show of force does. And this game also differs in that the distraction minions I mentioned will keep some agents occupied with the pleasures of your casino until they lose interest. Thank you for finally teaching me what Baccarat is. Apparently partaking in casino activities decreases your skill and resolve, and once the resolve meter is empty, they leave. It works great against weak agents, as does traps, as does having them beaten by your muscle minions. But when they get stronger, they can resist distraction. Some even ignore it completely, and other times they'll just bypass the casino by entering through the back door, unless you go through the painstaking effort of remodeling your lair so that the casino covers both entrances, which is a faff I decided not to partake in. Then past your distraction/cover lair is probably where your trap lair will be. And not only do traps become largely ineffectual against stronger agents, they're finicky to use. I mean, unless you remodel like I mentioned to say have a lair specifically for your distraction minions, but lacking enough incriminating items that agents who visit them won't be able to increase your heat on the world stage, your distraction minions will have to walk past the traps. And it's way too easy for them to accidentally get triggered and harm your own minions. Maybe I'm missing some hidden door feature or something, but if I'm not, that's very annoying. Or sometimes the traps will simply be ignored as well, because the particular agent has the ability to disable them. So ultimately, at least in my case, a lot of agents would make it deeper into the sanctum to experience minion fisticuffs. And sometimes the attacking force can, especially when led by a super agent, such as Atomic Olga, create a graveyard in your cramped corridors. And the agents, well, periodically, they do keep coming, and obviously you must remove them. They're pest-like, maybe even annoying, and it can be quite frustrating waiting for your recruitment drive to replace your casualties. If you knock them unconscious, you can brainwash them to join you, or you can hire more people on the world stage, but otherwise you can be a bit defenseless. defenseless. Well, you're not defenseless. It's more like you don't have a lot of breathing room. Sometimes literally. You get access to all the rooms pretty early on, but you can't dig through all the levels of rock. Research makes previously inaccessible tiles diggable, encouraging a remodel, making your starter rooms bigger and bigger. Plus, they've introduced the awesome innovation that the Dungeon Keeper like has been missing for such a long time. Introducing stairs! Finally, multiple floors, allowing for even more ambitious expansion. Maybe transplanting rooms if you want to bother with the gauntlet I wasn't willing to undertake. Improve room capacity, capability, etc. But in all fairness, it did encourage remodeling a bit for me, but I tend to try and use space efficiently. And honestly and unfortunately, at the end of the day, you don't need that much space to complete the game. I used 1.5 out of the 4 floors, maybe 2, except for the needed corridors to reach the Doomsday weapon. By the end, I used the final floor to house way more fusion generators than I needed, because I just had to power a treasury with state-of-the-art vaults. And even though your pop cap is a lot bigger than most games, you don't really require that much to house and water them. Your base will be filled to the brim if you're as tight-fisted as I am. But even if you aren't, I don't know if I've ever played a game that annoyed me when it gave me free gold. Every time I fired my Doomsday weapon, these would show up. I really don't need this. If for no other reason, then it's sparkly clutter. This is a game of bottlenecks. Wait for mission-specific research, wait for minion replenishment, wait for the slog to end, wait for resolve to drop so you can interrogate someone. And it gets even worse when you do the side stories to pull the thorns from your side. Research, scheme, fight agents, followed by super agents, or your rivals in villainy. End of segment, start a new one. Repeat 2 times. At which point you don't have to deal with the super agent anymore or the rival. You can even hire rivals instead, but I believe that takes more work, but can be worthwhile. Dr. Magnolia Ming especially. She's the only hench person I've seen with crowd control. It's repetitive, but I kept going through a lot of the side stories, surprisingly because of the story. The general humor can be quite good. I mean, doing a heist at Fort Knox to steal a high security door, bravo. Even the little gags do have their quality. Especially if you, like me, appreciate quality puns. Is it just me or is that joke surprisingly biting? It's funny, but it can get surprisingly dark and maybe even deep when you defeat a super agent, hearing them in resignation reveal their true emotions, you tapping into their fears, rubbing your victory in their faces. Honestly, it's unexpected that this is an area where the game shines. Unexpected depth. And it's fully voiced over quite well.
I don't need to kill you, Miss Foxworth. Without the steel program, you are already dead to me.
Choose to play with the general if you want to hear Brian Blessed.
Motherland, glorious Ivania, I miss you.
And the loot stories are fun, because once you complete the quest, you get a significant Lair item to satisfy different needs of your bumbling minions, as well as your amusement. It kind of reminds me of The Sims 2's aspiration rewards. See, a giant hourglass. Oh, the wonders you'll steal. The Declaration of Independence. A flying carpet. A dodo bird. Because you're a cartoon. But ultimately, it became too much, in spite of the distractions, and I rushed on to complete the main quest. Lastly, let's talk about the visuals and music. Both very good. The music is definitely Bond inspired. Cool and fitting, sometimes goes loungy. But hey, it's kind of a management game staple. Looking down at your architectural model should be somewhat relaxing, and visually it's cute, cartoony, colorful. You'd think evil villains would prefer less light and pick a less cheerful tile color, and as mentioned, it does have splashes of 60s. Just look at that beehive.
And look at Symmetry's bodysuit, the lava lamp thing.
The dialogue screens display your maniacal genius, which is a bit nice. Kind of jerky transitions aside, really goofy faces too. The game is quite long actually, about as long as its predecessor took, or at least it's close.
At 63 hours.
Just bear in mind, I did do a great deal of the side stories, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you didn't bother as much, and thus have a lower hour total. And it is cheap on Steam, 219 Rand full price.
21 Rand 90 cents on sale. That's 35 cents per hour of gameplay, which is utterly incredible.
But to download it isn't the easiest, as it takes up 18.07 gigabytes on the hard drive. And I didn't even try it on the Warhorse. I'm pretty sure it will get shot by a shark with a head-mounted laser beam. And stereotypically, I'd say it's kid-friendly. People die a lot, but bloodlessly, although you do see body bags, which is rather grim, especially when you as the villain defeat a super agent, as said, rubbing it in their face so matter-of-factly, it's almost enjoyably perverse sometimes. Maybe some will take exception at the cartoony archetyping, making fun with or fetishizing maybe certain elements that may be associated with nationalities or cultures, but maybe that's harsh. The game is nice, cartoony, colorful, cute visuals, with a splash of 60s style on occasion, and goofy character design. Nice color coding of the different classes, lovely angular world stage, bland world domination from. It has nice Bond-like music, and it does go loungy at times. It's cool and fitting, and sometimes injects some 60s fun too. Am I just confusing Bond with Austin Powers now? No matter, still cool. Cool, fun loot to get from side stories. Surprisingly good humor and writing, with opportunities for depth when dealing with the super spies. And the world stage also has funny lines. Puns and the like are inserted to ensure that at the very least a smirk is never too far away. It's fun to use the minions as a currency to complete schemes. Gives you a jolt when you get the reward. You know, if you can afford the minion price, that is. And they brilliantly innovated dungeon keeper base building with the different types of rock to encourage remodeling, and finally the inclusion of stairs, if there really isn't that much need to use all that space it gives you. On the maybe side, Lair gameplay is fun, but when the agents get tougher, traps and distractions get ineffectual to a large extent, and it can be quite irritating to have your traps harm your minions. I put this point as a maybe, because perhaps if you're more willing to remodel, you can make a better gauntlet that will deal with threats, or at least take away more of their health before they reach you, while not damaging your own minions as much. But because of the earth composition of some of the layers, I'm honestly not sure how much you'll be able to do that, if remodeling to that extent wasn't an annoying prospect in the first place. And I have no idea if you can actually improve how well distraction facilities work in a similar way. Otherwise, the game has mechanics that aren't completely thought out. And on the con side, the game is full of bottlenecks. Wait for minions to replenish, wait for research to complete, fight, then repeat those patterns for different side stories. Thus, it can get repetitive. But maybe if you hire more on the world stage and are more conveyor belty about brainwashing people, your staff problems would be over quicker. And lastly, really strong enemies can kill swaths of your minions, and arguably they'd be hard to stop even if you have a good gauntlet ready. And this issue may be a bit more irritating to some of us who played the original, because even though it's been a while since I played it, I seem to recall that was an issue then too. And when you consider all these issues, the agents are a bit more pestering than fun. And as said, some agents can just disable the traps, or do not get distracted at all. Come on, play it, and see how evil technology could have good implications for the planet. Just look at the massive food on this barbecue. Giant tomatoes, shrimp, and caterpillars? See, they're even decreasing their carbon footprint by substituting their proteins with some bug-adjacent items. It seems it's literally good to be bad.
Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.